People assume, oh, they're orphans, they have no parents, and so we got to get them adopted. But when you look a little closer, most of them, like maybe 80%, in some areas we've seen like way higher than 80%, have a surviving birth parent, at least one surviving birth parent that can be traced, found, prepared, restored, and walked with, of a journey of reunification and long-term family strengthening. If that's not enough high percentage in terms of a pool of families that are like these low-hanging fruit that we should all be putting all of our efforts towards seeking them out first, virtually every child has a surviving relative that has a existing commitment and care for the child and just needs to be come alongside in restoring them and allowing them to be a permanent family.
If you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you've heard me and Josh talk about MWI, which is our digital marketing agency. If you're new around here, this may be a first introduction to MWI. We're a full-service digital marketing agency that specializes in everything from website design and development to search engine optimization and all forms of paid advertising, whether it's paid social advertising or paid search advertising, content marketing, digital PR, social media management, basically anything a business needs to strengthen and grow their digital footprint is what we do over at MWI. The website is mwi.com. And for any listeners of the Hope Strategy podcast, I'd love to offer a free 20-minute consultation with yours truly to talk about your business, to talk about your goals, to understand, what you need to be doing from a digital marketing strategy and action plan standpoint in order to yield some results and grow your business online. So please reach out at mwi.com/hope strategy. That's mwi.com/hope strategy to sign up, and we will be in touch. Now back to the show. Welcome to a new episode of the Hope Strategy podcast, another addition to the Orphan Myth campaign mini-series that we've been running all week. If you're new to the podcast and this is the first time listening, normally we release one episode per week in the incredible conversations that we have with the unbelievable guests that we've had on the show. This week, though, and if you look at the last couple episodes and the next couple episodes, we're releasing one a day in special collaboration with the Orphan Myth campaign. You can go learn more about it at orphanmyth.org, and really trying to raise awareness, shed some light, and help with this amazing campaign, this amazing cause that is all about finding solutions for the foster care system in the United States and then the orphan crisis all throughout the world. Really been a pleasure to be a part of this, and very excited about this episode. I was very surprised and happy. It was a very pleasant surprise when the day before my interview with Mike Gallagher, or the day or two before, he sent me an email and said, "Hey, I've got somebody that I'd like to have on the interview with us. Her name's Lindy Cofer. She's a musician. She's a Christian music artist, and she has a special single that's coming out for the Orphan Myth campaign, and I would love for her to be a part of the conversation as well." I was excited. I started watching some YouTube videos in preparation to check out this Lindy Cofer, and I was so impressed. She's an incredibly talented musician, beautiful voice, some really great songs. And it was a real pleasure to have both of them on the show at the same time. We had a really great discussion. Mike Gallagher, his wife Mandy, was not on the show with us, but she's a huge part of his organization, which is called 1 Million Home. It's at 1millionhome.com. But Mike Gallagher and his wife Mandy have 6 children. Their youngest 3 children were adopted, 1 daughter domestically, and a boy and girl twins from Uganda. Flowing from years of experience with adoption with special needs and with building strategic partnerships to help more children like those they adopted, Mike and Mandy Gallagher co-founded the Chosen and Dearly Loved Foundation in 2004. Mike volunteers full-time as Chief Executive Officer. They are also the founders of 1 Million Home. And Mike and Mandy are majority owners of Educational Outfitters, a U.S. franchisor of school uniform retailers. He previously served as a managing director of Denver-based private equity firm Gallagher Industries. And he currently serves on the leadership council of the Christian Alliance for Orphans and the International Advisory Board of University of the Nations. Powerhouse. Such a great guy. Now, on to Lindy's bio. Lindy is originally from Edmond, Oklahoma. Lindy Cofer is a missionary singer, songwriter, and worship leader with YWAM, Youth with a Mission. In 2012, YWAM Kona launched a team to Southern California, which is now Circuit Riders. Through their ministry in college campuses and into the nations, the band was formed. Circuit Riders, which is the band, is based in Huntington Beach, California, where over 200 full-time missionaries serve on serve initiatives like Circuit Rider Music, Carry the Love, The Send, and more. The band is passionate about loving Jesus and seeing people reached with that love. So this has been a really fun week on the podcast because, as anybody that's listened to a lot of the episodes know, this isn't a religious podcast, but so many of the organizations involved with the Orphan Myth campaign, the idea is how can we bring together different groups in order to get 100% participation from as many people as possible to raise awareness and make change with this problem. And so many of these groups are religious, and it's so fascinating to talk to all of these different people and hear their stories and where their devotion lies and where they make their meaning, and how those places where they make their meaning lead them to make decisions that impact their own lives and the lives of people around them. These people in this organization that I've spoken with that are all affiliated with the Orphan Myth campaign are so service oriented, and we talk so much about it, and you can hear it in their voices and see it on their faces when we have these conversations, even over Zoom, the joy and happiness that it brings them to serve and to be a part of such a great cause. We talked about everything, and we talked about both of their backgrounds and where they're coming from. We also dove into, how they got involved with the Orphan Myth campaign. Yeah, it's really inspirational stuff. And they did a great job continuing to shed light on this and also sharing their stories with us. Please enjoy this conversation with Mike Gallagher and Lindy Cofer.
Something is happening in our world.
Time is very precious.
I'm going to show you how great I am.
Hope in the face of difficulty.
More than machinery, we need humanity.
Hope in the face of uncertainty.
I'm better now than I was. I'm experienced now.
Changing the world can happen anywhere, and anyone can do it.
The audacity of hope.
This is the Hope Strategy Podcast with Corey Blake and Josh Steinley. I'm a little bit starstruck because I just watched a bunch of Lindy YouTube videos, and unbelievable. You are so talented and so good.
Thank you.
Oh my
That's
goodness
awesome.
gracious. I'm one of the first listeners of I Will Praise that just dropped today, right?
It's today, yeah.
Yeah, I saw on your Instagram that it was going. I was like, oh yeah, I just barely watched it. And I went back and said, oh yeah, that just came out an hour ago. And I was one of the first ones, probably 45 minutes ago to jump on and watch it. So really, you are so talented. What a gift. Holy cow. I was so good.
Thanks, Corey.
I want to hear, Mike, give me some of the background on you, a little bit, kind of where you're from, and then just, a little bit brief of where you're from and your upbringing a little bit and your background, so that we can kind of paint a picture of the man that you've become and all these cool causes and the 1 Million Home Project and Orphan Myth. So give us a little bit of background there, and then, we'll go from there.
I was born in Toledo, Ohio, the Rust Belt. Grew up with the salt of the earth people of that part of the country, real Midwest culture, work hard, play hard. Grew up from a line of very devout Catholics, where many in my extended family, many priests and nuns in my extended family. Eventually, my father became a really strong leader and started from nothing, but became a really recognized leader, and ultimately got recruited to be a big part of growing multiple businesses. So that got my family moving around. And that was part of my own experience growing up in the business world, and ultimately getting to have a lot of opportunities within different operating businesses and work directly with my dad. So that was an amazing experience. Along the way, I really lost my faith. I became a pretty arrogant, well-studied skeptic, and just enjoyed all the best things the world had to offer. So had an amazing wife, amazing social life, amazing work life, and a total, almost like a hostility to anything of faith. There came a time where I had a really, for the first time, someone that I really respected just over a casual lunch witnessed to me about his own faith. And my response was to basically list off all of my skeptics, really challenge him on all these different fronts. Look at all the evil and injustice in the world. And he just listened and then just spoke about Christ. And this lit this fire in me, just because I respected him so much, that I started reading scripture for the first time. And I was riveted by this Jesus, this Jesus guy, reading the scriptures for the first time, even coming at them from a total skeptic view. I ultimately got to the Sermon on the Mount. In my first reading of the Sermon on the Mount, I had this really dramatic conversion experience. And in a moment, a lot of baggage and bondage that had gripped me for a life were just gone. And a faith was born that was just on fire. And it completely redirected the course of my life. At the time, my wife had right immediately following that, my wife had a prolonged season of just incredible suffering, just mentally and emotionally. And she didn't realize, but I was praying over her every night. And ultimately, she had a really profound healing, deliverance, coming to faith. And so from pretty early on, we went from complete hostility to complete living for Christ. And our faith was core to everything we were doing. Another kind of dramatic turning point in my life is when early in our journey as in faith, my wife looked at me one day and she said, "Hey, do you think we'll ever adopt someday?" Just out of the blue. I'd never heard anything. And that arrogance was still in me, even as a new passionate believer. And the first thought that went through my head was, I'm not raising another man's kid.
Yeah.
So, years later, I had my own dramatic conversion in my heart and really took on God's heart for these children that need families. And today I'm blessed to have 3 adopted children, one from America, 2 from Uganda, all sorts of special needs and challenges that we're experiencing the grace and power and beauty of God through it all. So it really started from 1, it started up to 3, what we did as a family. And then we, one by one, we just took more and more measures to help more and more kids. Today, it's all about 1 million home, and we hope to see that in the near future and millions more after them.
I've got a lot of questions about this origin story, and I want to, Lindy, jump in at any time as well with any of these questions. If you've got something to add, I would love to hear it. But one of the things that I hear a lot from people of faith, right? And really, it can be a Christian faith or other, but that have faith in something unseen that motivates them, that gives them hope, that gives them optimism, whatever, that gets them out of bed in the morning. A lot of times you hear about this period, and in fact, multiple people that we've talked about for the Orphan Myth cause and some of these amazing conversations we've had, a lot of times you hear about this faith crisis, or this period of life where they kind of fell away, or they didn't care, or they maybe focused on things that were not in line with the beliefs that one day they eventually come to. Why do you think that is, or where do you? It's a big question, I know, but how does that? Why does that seem to be such a common thread in people of faith, that there was a time when maybe it wasn't quite there and then they came to it?
That's such a great question. I think God is just the master storyteller. I think these conflicts and resolutions are just part of the grand story of our lives and of humanity. I often think that redemption is more beautiful and glorious than even creation. So somehow redemption is even greater than had creation never fallen and needed to be redeemed. And that's definitely been the case in my life. And I think it really fuels this unwavering, unturning, steadfastness, having known firsthand life without faith, life without Christ, life without hope, just left to ourselves and our own strength and our own wisdom and our own ways. So it's so fresh in my mind because I had that up into my adult life. I had it, starting a family, starting a life. So I never forget that. And knowing life before and after, I'm so fueled, and it just grows from there. And likewise, I think had I just, always known that, always been in kind of the covering of that, and never known life without it, I wouldn't have the same drive and passion and fuel.
It's funny that you keep saying fuel, because the thought that came to me as you were talking was that a lot of those things, it seems that a lot of the parts of that, the lifestyle outside of a faithful lifestyle and the thought that I kept having was they run out of gas eventually, right? It's like because people, as our human nature is to look for something outside of us that is driving us, motivating us. And again, like I said before, getting us up out of bed. And what we're longing for is finding that thing that lasts, right? That doesn't have temporary happiness or temporary pleasure, but more joy, long term. So interesting. Any thoughts on that, Lindy?
Yeah, super good. It's so funny. We were talking about this the other day, my husband and I, because in a context of bringing more children in our home and wanting to bring more children, the only reason why we are feeling a fresh drive for that is because we are encountering the power of the gospel through it. And similar to Mike, I was born and raised in the Bible Belt. So my exposure to Jesus was really to please man, I'm going to say yes to this to make you happy. And I feel like that's the part of people's faith that is deconstructing right now, is where we've said yes to having faith in Jesus because we've put maybe faith in a person above it, or we are scared of something. And what happened to me when I got saved in 2007 was I actually encountered what happened at the cross. I actually encountered the love of Jesus. And I went, oh my goodness, this is a game changer. And it did deconstruct every way I had faith, because I was scared of man. I had fear of man. And I feel like the Lord's dealing with that in people's hearts. I can see people all around. I don't really get scared when people are like, I'm deconstructing my faith, because in some ways I'm like, man, some people are going to have more powerful moments with Jesus because they're deconstructing a list of rules and thoughts they thought they had to achieve and attain their lives by. So I think, it's powerful. I feel like what you're seeing in some people's processes right now, because the end result is, I'm meeting an authentic Jesus. So it's kind of one of my favorite things to talk about right now.
Yeah. And man, you said, Mike, you said redemption in many ways is more beautiful than creation. And I'm like, that's money right there. That hit me when you said that. And I agree. That's awesome. And I again, that type of redemption that you're talking about, Lindy, is it's such a more personal, it makes it personal, right? Instead of, like you said, I'm doing this because it's the status quo, or because my community does it, or because my parents do it, or because whatever. When it becomes personal, and again, we've talked to a lot of different religions and stuff, so we talk to people of all faiths. That personal interaction, that personal coming to, can be to Jesus or other, right? Like it's just that need or that motivation to do something outside of yourself. And we've had that conversation a lot. Again, going back to this cause, is people find true joy and happiness when they begin to look outside of themselves. I don't care what the context is, right? If you're having a bad day, and I tell my kids this all the time, and we try to teach this, if you're having a bad day and you're feeling down on yourself, go do something for your brother. Go do something for somebody else. Go look outside of yourself, and all of a sudden your own personal grief and, bad mood or whatever seem to go away because you gain context and perspective. So I love it, which is a great tie into this cause. I think the conversations I've had are, you guys are all in sync, which is good to hear, right? All of the different parts of this that I'm talking to, but the idea that for so long there have been these myths of orphans, specifically in the U.S., that they don't exist, that there are no orphans, or that every orphan, they don't have parents, they don't have family, they're just whatever. And then the other, myth that we've talked about a lot, that one of the three is that it's too big of a problem. There's no way to solve this, right? And it seems like there's been a lot, whether it's the state, or the government, or a church here and a church here and a church here. Everybody's been doing what they can to try to solve a problem. And now what the orphan myth is doing, and what I'm seeing, and 1 Million Home is doing as well, and all of these different causes, is saying, look, let's bring all of these resources together and collaborate in a way that is more effective, more efficient, and let's really make a difference. So talk to me first about 1 Million Home and how this journey of adopting your own children led you to, it led you down let's call it a rabbit hole, an incredibly important rabbit hole that took you, it's taking you all over the world to all different parts of the globe to see this crisis, both in your own neighborhood, but also in Uganda and in, all over the place. And some of these lessons that you've learned as I've watched and done some research, it's been so inspiring. So tell us how that all began and paint the picture for what some of the solutions are that you guys have come up with.
Yeah, thank you. I always go back to that one child, right? It's like stop for the one in front of you. It started with our first child, which we adopted out of foster care in America.
She's beautiful, by the way. Oh my goodness, what a cutie.
She's amazing. She, the warnings were so dire for her life. It was so hopeless. Abandoned, had really complex, massive special needs, ruptured spine, left in a hospital. And because of her special needs and the circumstances being so beyond hope for her birth parents, it was such a life-changing experience to bring her in and see her completely come to life, and to see this whole person have such a powerful life within a family. Adopting then twins internationally from Uganda, they were born to a dying mother who was very sick and had really traumatic early life. So in bringing them home, we experienced kids who had been through prolonged traumatic experiences and the long, hard path to redemption and healing for that. So it was this discovery, one at a time, first in foster care, what can happen, second, international, what's happening. We were getting more and more involved internationally. And that's where we ultimately, in all along, we were just trying to help more kids get adopted. Like that's what we thought needed to happen. Hey, we're an adoptive family. We're going to take as many as we can and help as many other families do the same. But as we got more and more involved, we realized most of the kids that are in orphanages and even the far greater populations of kids living on the streets, they actually have biological families they belong with. Many of them biological families they want to get home to, but there's these barriers between them and getting home. And so,
and a lot of times that's not the parents, and it's easy to look and say, well, the parents aren't around, but you're saying aunts, uncles, siblings, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like people assume, they're orphans, they have no parents, and so we got to get them adopted. But when you look a little closer, most of them, like maybe 80%, in some areas we've seen like way higher than 80%, have a surviving birth parent, at least one surviving birth parent that can be traced, found, prepared, restored, and walked with, of a journey of reunification and long-term family strengthening. If that's not enough high percentage in terms of a pool of families that are like these low-hanging fruit that we should all be putting all of our efforts towards seeking them out first, virtually every child has a surviving relative that has a existing commitment and care for the child and just needs to come alongside in restoring them and allowing them to be a permanent family. So when we realized that, we actually discovered this incredible group of missionaries running an organization called Agape Children's Ministry in Kisumu, Kenya. And they had started as a traditional orphanage. When they realized this, like, wait a second, most of these kids have families. We can't keep them here. They started, all their indigenous staff, everyone at every level of their leadership just started to invest everything they were doing away from housing and educating these kids and putting everything towards finding the family, preparing the family.
And was this just a single orphanage in Kenya that was just doing its own thing, or were they part of a bigger group, or was it just they just realized this was somebody, they realized this solution and then started implementing it? Was it just a one-off group?
Well, it started just in and of themselves. They found that discovery. It's funny because now we've connected with so many groups from like 30 nations, and you see the same discovery, the same truth dawning on all these groups, and they thought they were the only ones doing it. Yeah. That's why we've been trying to get them all together. But as they did that, they literally put all their efforts towards getting a kid home. They had about 200 kids in their care. Everyone, literally every single child got home and home to stay. And suddenly they had all this open capacity. So what did they do? They actually started taking kids in off the streets. And
they didn't say our work here is done. They said, okay, now let's get proactive and get out there and find more and make these connections.
Yeah, and it's this whole idea that there's no exceptions. Some of these are the hardest cases you can imagine. What some of these kids have been through, and the trauma and loss and devastation of life on the streets, and literally there's no exceptions. The same group that was helping 200 kids basically like for their childhoods has changed their approach, and they've since helped way more than 3,000 kids get home. So that happened at one site. We came alongside them to help grow to a second site. And then we realized, we can't just grow your organization's sites. We need to help other organizations make the same shift. We have to help. And by doing so, we're going to help as many kids as possible, as fast as possible. And that's what began to, we went from 2 sites to then 15 organizations making this shift. Last year, it was up to over 40. This year, we think it's going to be over 100.
Wow.
And it's literally taking root across the nation of Kenya. And that's just one example. These are the kinds of swift but safe systematic changes that can happen as people work together.
The thing that just continues to impact me, and I feel like this is because, again, just being, doing my own, I've actually had quite a bit of interaction with adoption. My business partner, and also the co-host of this podcast, who's not doing this mini-series with me, but Josh, he actually adopted. You should go back and listen to his, if you want to listen to the whole episode, but I interviewed Josh and he interviewed me once on the podcast, and he adopted his daughter May from China. His story of adopting her is incredible. They lived in Utah, and through an experience, a spiritual experience, Josh felt the need, or he just knew that he was going to adopt a child from China. And he kind of had, and it's really powerful when he explains it on the show. I had heard the story before, but I love that he shared it with our audience. But he saw where and how, and it was just this really personal experience that he had, and he kept it to himself, but he went home immediately and he journaled it. He wrote it all out, and he's like, I don't even know how to tell my wife this. Like, how am I even going to explain this to her? Like, we're just doing our thing here. They had actually already adopted a daughter from the US, and then they had shortly thereafter a biological child. And anyway, so a couple years later it came out, and anyways, you can go listen to it, but they then moved to Hong Kong and moved to China, and then to follow this thing, and then they never adopted a daughter. They never found her. They had a bunch of files come to them, and they just said, this isn't it. They just knew that wasn't what. So they ended up moving back to the States after like 6 years, getting to Boston, and then like a month later getting a file and just knowing immediately this is who we're supposed to adopt. And she was almost 14. And in China, if you're 14, then you just get put into the system. You can't be adopted anymore. So they just said, we know this is what we're supposed to do. And so they expedited everything, and they got there and they adopted her and brought her home like a week or something before she turned 14. So it's kind of shocking as I'm talking about this. Why is Josh not on these podcasts with me? But
incredible.
Yeah. So and then I have another sibling that is adopted. And anyway, so I've been close to it, but again, not kind of in the weeds as I've gotten into these conversations. But the thing that just continues to hit me over and over again as you're talking about this, because it's easy and for your everyday person, when you see the numbers or the statistics or whatever, it is easy to dehumanize this process and say, there are 100,000 of this, or therefore, they did this 4,000 times or whatever. But when you really just stop and take a deep breath and think that the story you just told, where you said, I believe you said 3,000 kids have been placed back with their families. That's 3,000 human beings. That's 3,000 children's lives that were drastically changed. And then when you start to think of the work that you guys are doing across 30 different countries, and then again, going back to the Orphan Myth Project, and it really starts, when I talked to Brian Mavis, who's a big part of this, and, he's, what's the name of his organization?
America's Kids Belong.
America's Kids Belong. And when he started talking about the power that they had when they started videoing these kids and saying, rather than having this long waiting list of foster kids trying to get into homes, we want that to switch to where there's a long waiting list of parents, and every time a foster kid is there's somebody to take them into their home, and how we wanted to flip that script and just humanizing it with video and allowing these kids to get on and say, hey, this is why that is what I'm talking about, like that. So I think as I've talked to these people, to all of you amazing people, and as people listen to this, hopefully that's one of the things that sets in, is like, it's easy to hear about this in the distance and say, okay, that's a problem for sure, but I got my own things going on. To start to really humanize this process and say, there are solutions, and there are people like you guys that are working so hard to make things happen. And I love, and so going into the orphan myth, and I think with 1 Million Home, you do the same thing, which is like the 100% participation campaigns, where there's a way for everybody to get involved, even if it's not signing up to be a foster parent and next, bringing some kids in immediately. Right. So talk to me about that, how you use that model with both 1 Million Home and the Orphan Myth.
Yeah. It just goes back to this idea. It's like, scripture says God sets the lonely in families, right? No exceptions. God doesn't set the lonely in orphanages. God doesn't forget the lonely on the streets. God doesn't bounce the lonely around foster care, right? So it's this idea of 100% of these kids belong in a family. And there's a part for 100% of us to play in that. And we're blessed as we participate on their behalf. What more amazing outcome is there to be part of charitably, missionally, than helping a child who's without a family get home to a family? And that's the vision, that's the value system. It's important that we also realize, like you said, because so many people have this trigger to say, oh, I'll never adopt, I'll never foster.
Yeah.
I'll never go open an orphanage. That was the only mindset for what to do with the kid that needs a family. And it begins with that shift in mindset, right? 100% of these kids belong in a family, and 100% of us can play a really critical part in that. The second thing is that there's two ways home for every child. Reunited when possible, when there is biological family there for them, and then adopted when necessary. So all of us whose hearts begin with that spirit of adoption, that goal of adoption for a kid who truly needs to be adopted, we need more families than ever, but we need 4 times as much of these children to go home to their biological families, because that's actually where they belong and where they want to be. So yeah, 100% of these kids belong at home. There's 2 ways home: reunited when possible, adopted when necessary. And all of us should be part of that. For 1 Million Home, we feel like it's all about starting with that mindset. Just start with shifting the mindset that no, it should be unthinkable that we would leave a child as an orphan to grow up in an orphanage or grow up on the streets or just bounce around foster care. So it starts from there. And then we talk about shifting the model and shifting our money towards achieving these goals.
So if you go to 1millionhome.com, it's the number 1. So 1 and then millionhome.com. There's some great, you guys have, as somebody that's in digital marketing, I really enjoyed your website. Normally I'm very critical of websites when I look at them, and I was very pleased to see that it was built on WordPress and clean and custom, and good job.
Let us know how we can improve it.
Yeah, we can talk, but it was a great user experience. The UX is on point. So I was going through it, but there's some great video content on there. And just for those listening, because you're not watching this, but if you can visualize one of the things with the 1 Million Home Project that I liked that you talked about, and it started with this project in Kenya that you guys are now seeing the potential all over the place. But if you envision an orphanage with 1 door, and that's kind of been the model, there's 1 door and there's beds, there's 60 beds inside and we can fit 60 kids, and there's 1 door in, and then the kids either age out or, there's 1 door out, whatever. But the idea and the visualization is, let's make multiple doors. Let's have 1 door in, and then let's have another door that goes out. And so as people are coming in, hopefully we're having more people go out that back door and go be reunited with their families. And it's just kind of, like you said, it's that paradigm shift. It's having a shift in mentality to say, there's a way to make this journey different than what maybe the norm has been or the status quo has been, if we give it the right TLC and right attention. And I love it.
Well, I love this idea of starting with that shift in mindset, because until that happens, until we actually say every one of them belongs in a family. And so anything we do on their behalf should result in that. Otherwise, we got to change how we're intervening, right? And my friendship with Lindy and this vision to really start with that, shifting the mindset. What more powerful way is that than actually reaching right into the heart, right? So we talk about sermons and stats and systems, but nothing will go further and farther than a song to reach right into the heart. Nothing will accelerate that change in mindset and change in action than reaching the heart. And so that was something where getting involved with Lindy was this incredible opportunity to accelerate how we can shift mindsets by reaching the heart first. So yeah, her involvement and 100% participation and this song that she's written, which we believe just shines bright the heart for these children, is something we're so excited about.
Yeah. And so I'm telling you, if you want to hear an incredibly talented singer, go to YouTube and just type in Lindy Cofer, Cofer. I really would. Again, I don't know what I expected. I mean, I wasn't, but just you have and I love music and your voice is incredible. So awesome. So what's your background? So you said you grew up in the Bible Belt. We heard that part of it, but how did you get into music? And walk me through that. I'm curious.
So I was born and raised in Oklahoma. Actually, my whole family's musical. I would have probably been the least musical of everyone.
What part of Oklahoma?
Edmond, Oklahoma.
I just went to Oklahoma for the first time. So my parents split. They got divorced when I was 5, and I've never met my mom's side of the family. And that's like my Native American side of the family. My dad's side is all like, European backgrounds, whatever. And so I've never met any of that side of the family, but I just went, one of my uncles on that side passed away, and I just saw it on Facebook, and I just felt like I need to go meet these people. There's a lot of them, and I've never met them. And so I went out there anyways. It was a couple of weeks ago. Great experience.
Wow. Where'd you go in Oklahoma?
It was a little town called Marietta.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yes.
Yeah. Middle of nowhere, like pretty close to the Chickasaw, reservation.
Yeah. If you were there, that's awesome.
Yep.
Amazing. Yeah. So born and raised there, again, knew about faith, Jesus, right? All this stuff. Mm-hmm. But my context of it was to not go to hell. That was my whole paradigm of religion. So then what happened was I started going on missions trips in high school, like the spring break, like hop on a church missions trip. So I hopped on some of those, but then I was like, I feel like I'm experiencing a presence of God on these trips that I couldn't explain. I felt like I was meeting him in the streets of these places we were going by meeting people and seeing them, hearing about their encounters with God. And so it was a spiritual experience for me going on missions trips. So I went, what if I take a gap year and go to a mission school and just see what I find about God? What do I have to find him for myself if this is real? So I Googled mission school and I got to Youth with a Mission. And that's how I got there. And no music in sight, just kind of wanted to go there for a year.
Where was that at?
When was that?
Where's that school at?
So this one's in Hawaii, in Kona, Hawaii.
Oh,
not a bad place to go to a mission school.
Not at all.
But they have bases all over the world with training schools. But I was just led to this one. It's the biggest base. So I went there and my whole world got flipped upside down. I met the God of the scriptures that I had heard about my whole life, but it became a real tangible experience. And in the midst of this, I had never really encountered worship music. I had heard like Christian music on the radio, like your classic, you're scrolling through and then you hear like the Christian station and it sounds all the same and it's awesome. But that was my exposure, right? So then in this moment I'm having, I just went, wow, I want to articulate what's happening to me through song. I couldn't explain it. It was just this drive.
So up until that point, you weren't a singer? I mean, you didn't sing, you sang like in church and stuff, but it wasn't.
Choir in school, but no, not really. No,
that's unbelievable to me.
Yeah.
I almost can't believe it.
It's unbelievable to me too. All my friends were like the super good singers. All my siblings are like crazy good musicians. And yeah, so it was really funny. But what happened was in YWAM, there weren't a ton of worship leaders. So if you could hold a note, you were now a worship leader. And YWAM Youth with the Mission. So I'm leading worship for these smaller groups, smaller teams of people, these in the training schools, I'm leading worship. But then I'm realizing I feel like called to this. Like I'm finding a passion in songwriting and watching people step into something through songwriting. So whether it's a revelation of how I'm encountering God, or it's a revelation of something I'm experiencing and I write about it, I would watch people grab a hold of these songs and they became then personal to people. What was personal to me, other people were finding personal. And so I just kind of had this moment where I was like, I feel like I'm alive. I feel like this is actually what, you hear people, they discover things they're called to. I was kind of having that moment of, I actually feel called to this. I never thought this would be part of my future or my destiny, but I'm really feeling this. So I just began to songwrite. Then we started doing events on college campuses where we would lead our songs, and people were like, where can we get this music? We're like, nowhere. There's not available anywhere.
Right here, right now is where you can get this music.
Yeah, right. That's it. And so then we recorded our first album. That was in 2016, and the rest is history. And so as I, over 2 years ago, we became approved foster parents. And I'm involved with an event called The Send that Mike is also a part of, where the whole thing is faith without works is dead. And why aren't we talking about this as the church? There is a missional response to having a spiritual experience with God, because when you encounter that part of the heart of God, you find Jesus is very missional in his actions, in the way he walked, in the way he spoke to people, and how he, only did what he saw the Father doing. So I have just gone, Lord, I want to carry these songs. And Mike just went, hey, Lindy, I think you need to start really reaching for songwriting for this, for what's happening with 100% participation and, Orphan Myth and 1 Million Home. And I was so already in this space, because when I became a foster mom, Corey, you can imagine you do a deep dive, because exactly what you said a minute ago, where I had dehumanized statistics, suddenly I'm not just holding one of these humans, I'm seeing them on a daily basis. I'm doing visits with biological parents. I'm sitting in rooms where biological parents are meeting with their kids and in foster care systems. And I'm watching the moms, and I'm seeing the brokenness in their eyes. And I'm seeing these kids separated from their parents. And suddenly what used to be just statistics and a short promo video that made me feel, my heart feel tingly inside became, these are real lives. These are real parents that need help getting their children back. These are real. I still lose it when I talk about it, because that month when I first became a foster mom was so real that I just go, oh, okay, I will give my life for people to see how I just saw this, because you can't sit back anymore once you've become aware. And it doesn't mean you have to become a foster parent, or that doesn't mean you have to adopt, doesn't mean you have to, but there are small ways, whether it's giving, whether it's praying, whether it's helping a family that is called to this. And so I've even gone, wow, I've found more of a passion to capture these things in songwriting. Because I'm like, if I can take this small moment where, it's easy to, I'm just going to be totally honest, when you think of people losing their kids, you're like, well, why don't people just get their act together and not lose their kids? Well, some people are coming from generations of addiction, and they don't know how to get over addiction. They need help. They need people going, hey, let's go find this free place you can get in. I'll help you get there. You're going to get your kid back. I'm going to help you get your kid back. It's real humans struggling. And I think when that's why I loved that phrase you used, Corey, of when I experienced the dehumanization I had in my own experience, and that began to dissolve. And I just went, oh my gosh, these are real humans, and I am called to this. And as long as I'm alive, I want to write songs that help people see this and help people act according to this issue. So that's kind of where, even as both you guys are talking, I'm just sitting here muted, just saying, oh my goodness, yes. So
we, one of the things that comes up a lot with all the people that I've talked to is these moments in life where, and again, this can be a spiritual thing, a religious thing, or it can be an entrepreneurial moment where you're just in that seat in that moment, and you have that moment where it's like, I'm right where I'm supposed to be in this moment, right? Like this decision or this. So I love that you had that moment where you said, when you were on Kona or whatever, and you said, whoa, like this is a lot of things coming together that I didn't foresee, that I didn't know, but this is right where I'm supposed to be. And then again, when you're sitting in that room with the, the foster parents and with the kids, and you're like, whoa, this is right where I'm supposed to be. There is a bigger reason that I'm in this room right now. And there's a lot that I can do. I love those moments. Those are the best. I want to hear about this song. I think the time is great to hear. So there are no orphans in heaven. Let it be so on earth. So this journey of songwriting, again, like I love it, right? Hindsight's 2020. But when you look at this journey you went on and discovering this love of music and this gift of songwriting, and then now you go and you figure, you delve into this foster system and get involved with these organizations, and then those things coming together. So if I understand right, Mike came and had you already written the song, or was this like a collaboration where he said it would be cool to write a song for this, or what was the
I had written a few like personal songs, kind of processing my own experience, but it was Mike who was like, Lindy, I think you should really do like focused songwrites around these issues. And it was almost like I just needed the permission to say, yes, I'm going to do this, because, there's genres. And as a songwriter, without realizing it, you can go, okay, it doesn't fit into these genres, so maybe this is just something personal for me. But I just felt this whole area of action and missional lifestyle. I'm like, there's such a lack of songs around this. Mm-hmm. And so I just was like, I just needed that permission, that push. And so when Mike said that, and I was like, let's do it. So I just started I texted a few of my friends, some of my friends from Maverick City, some of my friends in Nashville who are amazing songwriters. I'm like, hey, I'm just throwing this out there. If anyone gets anything, let me know. My friend Mitch Wong, an incredible songwriter, texts me. He's like, I know I have to songwrite with you on this. And I'm like, okay, there's something about I'm going to throw some thoughts at you. It's like what I've seen, I can't ignore. Like my heart knows I have to do something. There's we got to do something about the orphans, children. And so we hop on a Zoom, right? And he's like, I think I know the phrase. And so Mitch was the first one. He's like, there's no orphans in heaven, let it be so on earth. And I'm like, oh my gosh, there's no children forgotten. And we kind of went back and forth. And then that declaration came. Okay, so we actually believe this. There are no orphans in heaven. There are no children forgotten. So let it be so on earth. And then as we kept singing it, I just went, I don't know, Mitch, I think I got to sing this bridge like literal to my experience. So in the bridge, it says, we're trading our comfort zones for open hearts and open homes. We're leaving complacency to meet the need and give freely. Let it be so on earth. And so it's so funny, as I've showed people this song, they're like, this is amazing. Oh, I just feel this. I'm so excited to pray this out. And they get to the bridge and it's like, well, now I want to go get approved to be a foster care parent. Yeah. And I'm like, well, hey, whatever it looks like for you. So that's kind of how this song came about in real simplicity. And we've worked on another one with my friend Majesty from Maverick City Music, where it's this song is more about exactly what Mike, you said earlier, of he sets the lonely in family, not in a program, not in a good idea, but he sets the lonely in family. So I just think we've just scratched the surface of songs to really capture this heart and help people maybe just get a deeper understanding of it through song. So
I'm jealous of that process. I'm jealous because just like I am in no way a musician, but I love words and I love songs and I love music and just your process. Like I listen to that and I'm like, man, that's so cool. Like I would love to be like, hey, let's jump on a Zoom, right? Let's write an amazing song together. Like that process is so cool. And again, when you tie in, it's not like you're writing not, a pop song or something that's just like, how can we make this edgy or relevant or whatever? But it's like, no, let's write something that is near and dear and deep right now for me in this moment. What's going to come out is going to be something powerful.
Yeah.
And the message in those songs, it's, again, you're, like you said, as a songwriter, you're kind of looking for like, well, who's the audience for this and what genre is it? But just to kind of put that all to the side and just say, I'm just going to write what's coming through right now. And for a specific, purpose and cause. I can't imagine too, any like foster kids that hear that song or come, like the hope that they would get, like the hope that to hear there's people out there singing about this problem. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and just to hear the, like you said, there's nothing like music that can really get you to your core immediately and make you get all the feels, right? That's awesome. I love it. So the song is going to release the week of the 22nd.
Yeah. So it'll come out with the campaign, and we're kind of going to draw people to it. Yeah, it's a song, but pray this with us, declare this with us. So it'll be fun.
This campaign call to action is 100% participation to get 100% home. We hear that there's a myth that these kids are orphans and that they're being left as orphans. And we're going to do something about that. The truth and us can change that. And it's going to take 100% of us to get 100% of them home. So this idea that there's this social by design, peer-to-peer rallying, saying like, I'm doing this and you go and do likewise. I'm doing this and you join me doing this. Mm-hmm. And Lindy is not only releasing this song, she's actually rallying others of her peers, which are these fellow worship leaders that each have these, really strong worship communities that they're helping lead out. And what Lindy's doing is actually rallying some of her closest friends whose hearts burn for this, like hers. And she's saying, hey, 100% of us, let's 100% of us do this together. Let's do this now. This is an hour where we can catalyze a turning point in this crisis. And so I think it'd be really amazing for Lindy to be able to just share about that as well. And it's this amazing example of what any of us can do. It doesn't matter how influential our circle. It doesn't matter how big our circle. The first time we ever did 100% participation, it was with my family. And I in one moment, I said, we need 100% of us to act now. Everyone give. I don't care what it is, but give something. And within an hour, every one of my family was all in. Then we did it for every family on our team. And then we shared at an opportunity where I spoke. And it's this idea, like, we can all do something now. It doesn't matter how little it is. We can all actually take an act now. We can give, we can pray, but we're going to do it now, and we're going to do it together.
Yeah. So if you go on to orphanmyth.org and you scroll down just a little bit, kind of in the middle of the page there, it talks about the 100% participation. And the idea, again, is that whether like Mike said, with his family first, or your sports team, or your company, or your business, or or your church, or whatever, your book club, it doesn't matter, whatever, if just to bring this up and bring it to the surface, you can go now and pre-register on the website. But the idea is to put together a group where every single person contributes something, some way, somehow. And one of the conversations that we've had in multiple times now is that, again, when you talk about how this is a distant problem, well, that's not in my, orbit at this point. That's not something that I'm really, but just to go on and become a part of a team that's giving something, give $1 or take some time to do some research and share the message on Facebook, whatever it might be. If everybody just did a little bit and did one thing as part of this group and felt, then you're kind of, not that we do these things to check boxes, right? But it does fill your cup a little bit to say, I didn't just hear about this thing and think of it as some distant other. I became a part of it, and I became a part of a team that's making a difference, and it's just good for the soul, right? It's good, and it's a good thing to do to help others. So go look at that. And Lindy, I'd love to hear more about what you're doing with your peers and the groups that you're working with to have that 100% participation.
Yeah. So I basically just get to call my friends, so I've got a friend from Upper Room, one from Maverick City Music, of just going, let's engage our audience, the people we're leading in worship, the people we're in front of, the people who are following us on social media, because like so many people, my own experience was a lack of education of how we can actually act, and that what are people doing. And when I even, when Mike and I first started talking, I'm looking at the Orphan Myth website. These are days I've dreamed of, for all these organizations to come together like this and say, let's do this. Because I love, Mike, you said this earlier, of just being siloed in our own areas. We can't actually address an issue full on. We are better together. There is a part of social reform that takes all of us. It takes everyone's parts they're carrying. And I feel like when we engage our circles like this, and my peers just going, hey guys, for those that are, my age group or where I'm at in life, like, let's engage our people. Let's just talk about it. Let's start the conversation, because a lot of the inaction is linked to a lack of education. And so sometimes that's where you go, wow, knowledge is power. The more we know, the more it's like we can step out, we can have educated decisions of where we're giving, where we want to put our lives in action. And I think that's just where I get excited. So it's me. It's basically my friends from Upper Room, my friends from Maverick City. They're going to throw down. It's going to be fun.
Cool. And again, perfect example of whatever your circle of influence is, whatever your peer group is or whatever, just opening your mouth, right? And saying something, right. and then starting a conversation can be, that's how the best things happen, right? That's how conversations are started, and then movements gain traction, and there couldn't be a better one again to be involved in. And I'm feeling all sorts of responsibility now. There's no blind eye at this point. Having had so many of these great conversations, I'm excited to. I actually introduced it to our team on our company meeting yesterday, and explained this process and these conversations I was having, and I'm excited to get our organization involved as well.
To interject, the guy who's producing the song, his name is Jacob Suter. He's amazing. Him and his wife is actually featured on the song. But they're same thing. They're like, you can't work on this song and produce the song and not. He's like, I need to get in touch with Mike. I'm like, I'll get you an email, Mike.
Yeah, no, I was thinking about that as you guys were talking again today. I've thought about it. I'm like, man, this is the 5th conversation where I've spent a solid hour plus talking about this and getting all the information I need, to really, and jokes aside, like that is one of those moments of, you're here right now in this moment, hearing this thing, and see what you can do to do something about it. Right. And to not turn a blind eye. So I'm excited about that. It is a pleasure to steal an hour of your guys' time and to talk to both of you. I'm so glad, Mike. Thank you so much for bringing Lindy, and that's such a treat and such an extra witness to this whole thing. That's amazing. The website again is to get involved with Mike's organization and all of the incredible work that they're doing is millionhome.com. And then obviously, as you've heard over and over again, as you've been listening this week, the orphanmyth.org is where you can go learn more about Orphan Myth and get involved in the 100% participation. And do yourself a big favor and go again to YouTube and type in Lindy's name and just listen for a while, because it was the best part of my morning so far. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. And seriously, from my seat, which is a small one in this whole thing, but thanks for all the work that you're doing for this incredible cause. Yeah, it's powerful stuff.
Yeah, thank you, Corey. So great to be with you.
Yes, thanks you.
Thanks for all you're doing.
Hello, it's Corey here, and I just want to thank you so much for listening into the Hope Strategy podcast. I hope you're enjoying it as much as we are enjoying having these amazing conversations with these incredible individuals talking about hope. We'd love it if you wouldn't mind liking, subscribing, and leaving us a review on iTunes or Spotify or anywhere that you listen to your podcasts, and share it with anybody you feel that can benefit from these messages of hope. Thank you so much for listening to the Hope Strategy podcast.